Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of Building Returns, hosted by Radio W.O.R.K.S. My name is John Stokoe, and my business partner, Roger Burrows, and I founded Source My Property, which is a property development and investment portfolio building firm in South Wales of the UK. We are rapidly expanding across the whole of the south of the United Kingdom and soon into Europe, but that's another story. This radio show is Building Returns, and it's all about the movers and shakers in the property industry globally. And my role here is to showcase what they are doing and what they are doing differently and better than everybody else, and to share their original flavor. Tonight, we have the pleasure of showcasing a true global jet setter who really attracted my interest on social media and who's been setting the world on fire doing property transactions all around the world. Definitely an interesting chap and one to watch. Welcome from New Zealand, Kyron Gosse. How are you,
Hi,
Kyron?
John. Thanks. Good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Honestly, a pleasure to have you on the show, mate. Before we get into it, and into the thick of it, and start talking about where you are right now, can you give us a brief background on yourself, where you're from, and how you've ended up being, well, in the property industry and now on the show?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually from a very small town in the very north of New Zealand, tourist town, not much to do. I ended up as a chef. So I started chasing the money, and as all Kiwis do, I ended up in Australia working on the mines, working on the oil rigs. And it was there that I was earning really good money, but I started reading books about real estate. A lot of the people on the oil rigs were investing. And I discovered it was so difficult buying property whilst working night shift on an oil rig that I was actually going to move back, quit my job, move back to New Zealand, and just make it happen, build a property portfolio. The goal of this was in order to get paid to travel around the world, because when I was living in Perth, I absolutely hated it. And when I'd work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, that side of things. So I'd get back to Perth and I'd just start traveling. And I was like, man, it would be so cool if I could just get paid to travel. And so luckily for me, there's kind of an intersect between how I built my property portfolio, passive income, real estate income, and the digital nomad lifestyle. And so I got to the point where I was able to quit my job, had a Dutch girlfriend at the time, so moved to the Netherlands. And from there, we just started traveling the world until I hit Bali. I've been to Bali many times, and as soon as we got here, it was like, yeah, this is definitely home. And then set up shop in Bali, basically.
Okay. And how long were you traveling the world for then? Were you doing property while you were traveling? Yeah,
definitely. So I've always been doing deals back in New Zealand. New Zealand in particular is a very easy market to do deals in. For me to sign paperwork, anything like that, I've been in Germany running around finding notaries. I've been in Spain running around trying to find notaries. Almost ended up having to go to Madrid to the New Zealand embassy. And it turned out one of my friends was actually a lawyer. And I was like, oh my God, here I am, like, really struggling to get someone to sign these papers, and you've been here the whole time. So for me to be able to do deals back in New Zealand from anywhere was fantastic. But I also got really interested in what was happening in the different property markets around the world. Obviously, prices are different. I was living in Valencia in Spain, where I discovered you can buy almost beachfront property for 100,000 euros, which was just crazy, right? So I started really working hard on that. In the Netherlands, when I first moved there, I told my girlfriend at the time, I was like, yeah, I can do property anywhere, because it's just learning how the market works. Once you learn the basics of property.
I'm just going to stop you there, rewind exactly what you said. You said you're going to learn and you're going to do property anywhere around the world. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, property, once you learn the fundamentals of property, it's almost the same. So, if you're going to trade a property, if you're going to do a buy and hold, it's pretty much the same everywhere in the world. You just need to go into the new market, learn what's happening in that market, who the major players are, how funding works, and what all the different rules are. Okay. And so once you figure all that side out, which realistically can actually happen within less than a week, then you can do property in any market. And so I was in the Netherlands. And I'd said to my girlfriend at the time, I was like, well, I can do this anywhere. She's like, no, you can't. I'm like, of course I can. It can't be that hard to get a house in the Netherlands. And she's a lot younger than me. And you know, many young people today still have that disbelief that you can actually buy a property or you can do a property deal or that side of things, because we're brought up that buying a house is this major goal that takes years to save up for, and then you've got to get a mortgage, and it's this major thing, right?
Yep.
And so I'd moved to the Netherlands. She told me, she's like, well, if you get a property in the Netherlands, I'll move in with you. And so sure enough, I ended up doing a deal in the Netherlands. That was a relatively simple deal because it was just a straightforward lease option. Found a guy who lived in New Zealand. I didn't actually even search for him. He found me. And he lived back in New Zealand. He had lived in the Netherlands, had broken up with his girlfriend, had an apartment there. Things got really messy. And in the Netherlands, their systems are still really backwards. So all the letters get sent straight to the address. There's major problems with water and electricity because you absolutely legally must have a contract on the place. And so when his girlfriend moved out, she stopped paying the bills and that sort of thing. And the place was sitting empty, paperwork piling up like this. So I came in, got my girlfriend basically to translate all the letters. We figured everything out. Discovered the reason why it hadn't been let. He had a letting manager who couldn't let it, and that was because it looked like some old 70s Indian style house. And so we just came in. I think I spent 2,000 euros, just renovated the whole thing, just liquor paint, tidied it all up, got rid of all the weird hippie stuff, and made it livable. And within days, I had a tenant in there. And so I then started making that margin between what I was renting it for and what my tenant was renting it off me. Whilst I had a better apartment back in the city we were living in. But I think that kind of showed her that, oh, actually, yeah, you don't have to just come out and buy a property. There are many different strategies that you can use in order to leverage property to make money, to do deals in different countries.
No, sure. So doing lease options, something I'm very familiar with here. To those viewers who don't understand it, it's basically you're taking a contractual possession or utilization of a property when you don't actually own it, and you have the option to, or the potential to, utilize their mortgage, which you might have to pay back to them as a mini rental payment, but you can also charge a rental or a tenant, and then you can make a margin between that as a residual income. So that as a strategy is it's relatively up there with people learning these sort of things. So where did you learn all the strategies, the property strategies, for you to be able to know exactly how to get on with this one and in another country?
So I was back in Australia working on the O.R.K.S, and one of my colleagues gave me a book which is called From Zero to 130 Properties in 3.5 Years. And I was like, that sounds pretty good. And it was a guy called Steve McKnight. And I read it and I was like, this was where I got the idea of like passive income and getting paid to travel the world and that side of things. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so what I did is I researched him and discovered he was actually going to be speaking in Perth the night I got back to Perth, back home from the O.R.K.S. And I was like, this is too good not to miss. So I worked all night, had a 2-hour helicopter flight, an hour and a half small plane flight, a 4-hour commercial jet flight, arrived in Perth, hadn't slept for about 24 hours, went and saw him live and was like, oh my God. And so I signed up to his apprenticeship program. And he'd compiled everything. He was like the real analytical type, right? So he'd compiled a folder about that big, and he'd partnered up with one of the universities. So when you finished that folder, it was actually a degree as well, a certificate in business. And so I just spent a year whilst I was working on the O.R.K.S, like I'd take my folder with me and just go through all the different side of things. And that was what was brilliant about that was it was starting with the end in mind. I've seen so many people come through who would just go out and buy a house and they have no real direction. So it was starting with the end, working backwards what you were really trying to achieve. And so I did that. I was part of Steve's network for years, absolutely brilliant. And then when I got back in New Zealand, I actually did another course with a local mentoring company, just on the ground, running around houses, seeing how things actually work as well.
So
but I'd also, pardon?
Where was your portfolio? Where did you initially grow, and where did you expand your portfolio?
My very first house I bought was my grandparents' place, which is back in my hometown.
Cool.
I bought that having no idea what I was doing. It was probably not the best place to buy at the time. But again, yeah, exactly, because property prices always go up, right? Just
do that, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes 8 years.
Yeah.
Had I bought somewhere else, I would have made like 5 times as much money, or made the same amount in a year or two. But massive learning curve, and also I had no idea what I was doing at the time. That's the first and only mortgage I've ever got. Ever since then, I've been able to leverage other people, and that was while I was still on the oil rigs. I got that property, and I didn't realize at the time, but how I did it was actually quite smart, because it was my grandparents died. The house went to my mum and my 2 aunties.
Mm-hmm.
I got a mortgage and bought my 2 aunties out, and that was leveraging off the equity that my mum still owned in it. So she had the equity, I had the mortgage, and we sort of co-owned it for about a year before I went and bought her out of it fully. And then she left behind a small vendor's mortgage when I took it over completely. From there, once I really started diving into property properly, I did it in Auckland in New Zealand. I knew Auckland was about to go for a boom, and I felt that was the right place. So I moved back to Auckland, connected with all the major players very quickly, rose up the levels. I connected in with local property investor association. I started holding meetings again, very much geared towards young investors. And then online, I built my presence online by connecting young investors together, because we're going, whenever you ask a question, this was back when forums were really popular. Now it's more Facebook groups. And we'd ask a question, and you'd have some old guy who bought a property back when you could buy a house for $15,000 in a really good suburb. And 20 years later, that same house is worth $1.5 million. And you got some old guy going like, I don't know why everyone's complaining, because it's not that hard. And it's like, well, that's easy for you to say. You paid $15,000 for a 4-bedroom house. We got the same thing. We buy the same thing for 1.5 million. I can tell you that salaries haven't increased 10 times in the last 20 years. And so I got that young community together, and we started sharing what we were doing and how we were getting into the market and what strategies we were using. And that built a lot of media presence as well, because it was a massive thing at the time that young people couldn't get into property. And I was like, well, I call BS on that. Here's how I'm doing it. Here's how I've built a portfolio doing it, which, as you know, you're online, putting yourself out there, you get a lot of negative feedback as well, a lot of negative reactions. And I was like, so what? I'm like, I could sit here, one day the reality is we're not going to have a pension. We're not going to have, the government's not going to be able to provide for us when we're old. I'm actually doing something about that. I'm not putting any strain on the government. Isn't that a good thing? But
it's fantastic. But you've nailed it. And there's a couple of points I want to highlight there, Kyron. Is a lot of people wake up to this later on in life. A lot of people have been stuck in their jobs, and they're realizing, oh, I don't want to be doing this. I want to be living on the beach. And you are the quintessential guy that people should look at and model themselves on. Fortunately, you picked it up early, and you nailed it. You wanted to create a tertiary, a secondary income, or a primary income, really, that created an income for you to live the life of your choosing. I personally believe that 90%, 99% of people that have jobs are, I always think of it as almost like a jail. They're in that jail, but they just accept it. It's just the way it is. They don't actually know how to escape that prison of financial burden, because they are not able to live the life that they want to live. You found that early, and you clocked it very quickly, and exactly what you said. You had that end goal in mind. Some people just go a property or whatever, but they don't actually think about where they're going. And if you plan this properly, you can legitimately retire from any job or whatever it is you're doing, and you can set up shop and you can live wherever you want to live. You can live the life of your choice, of your choosing, on your own terms, and you live by the options that you create through this product. And this is why I like, and property is one of the, dare I say, simplest. People disagree with us, whatever, but in principle, it's a simple transaction. You buy something, you might fix it up, you sell it, you make some money, or you buy something and somebody else pays the mortgage and you make a differential, you make the rental, and that's where your income comes from. And when you build up enough of those, hey ho, all of a sudden your salary is covered. And now I can, where do I want to go? Oh, do I want to go and play golf today? Do I want to go surfing today? Do I want to do whatever the hell I want? So you have created that. And I believe there's, first of all, people don't know that they can actually do that. They don't believe it. And when they go to these courses, when they meet these mentors, it's a massive eye-opening. When you read the book, and it's transformational. It'll change your life. But where I find that people are running short from that is they lack that sort of self-belief. And I think that self-belief comes from a lack of education, which you have done. You have educated yourself. And I think one of the main reasons people don't do it is they think, like these other chaps are going, oh, $1.5 million for a house in Auckland, I can't afford that, so I may as well not even buy my first property. But with the right education and the right strategies that you have, you can quickly escalate and you can find the right deals in the right environments with the right people, the right backing, whether they be capital partners or equity partners or finding deals on lease options and that sort of stuff. You can create those strategies. And the output of that is an experienced person who's on a radio show telling people exactly that, you are the epitome of what is capable. I mean, we were talking earlier about doing property transactions right around the world. There's nothing that can stop you. The only thing that's stopping you is yourself. So free yourself from the shackles, get out there and go and do something and learn. This is what this radio show is about. There's an extra piece we talk about just now, but this is what it's all about, is educating those who might not know or might not have the skill sets. How are we doing stuff? I have one question that I always ask: how the hell do you do property deals or transactions with none of your own money? I'll let the experienced man tell us. How do you do them? Give me a couple of versions of that.
Well, actually, I put together 13 different ways to do it with little to no money. It's 4:30 in the morning here. I'm not going to remember all of them, but I can definitely rattle off quite a few, as well as ones I've done. So the first way I started when I left my job on the oil rigs, I moved back to New Zealand, and I went from having a really good salary and banks loving me, being highly mortgageable, to, oh, you've got no job. There's no point even talking to a mortgage broker yet. And so I say to everyone, right? Everyone who comes into property, this is why I love property, because every deal is different, every person's different. Everyone has a different mixture of capital, skills, resources, knowledge, and network. And so it's what do you have? What are the resources that you have that you can go ahead with? And this was one of my favorite quotes.
Can I throw in an extension on that word there? It's not about the resources to buy property. It's the resourcefulness of yourself that gets to buy properties.
That's even better. Exactly. And Steve McKnight, one of my favorite quotes, one of the best things he ever said is, don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do.
Sure. And if it's something that you're battling with, find somebody who can help you.
Exactly. That sort of turned my thinking right around. So when it got to the point where I couldn't get mortgages anymore, I was like, what can I do? And I was like, I've just quit my job. I have all the time in the world. All I'm doing is running around looking at property anyway. And so I was talking to one of our old family friends, and I was like, hey, looking at doing deals, blah, blah, blah. In the end, we partnered up together. I found a property. The goal was buy a house, renovate it, put tenants in, recycle out the money we'd put in. We call it recycling our equity, and still have a cash flow positive property. And I did it.
For the viewers then, let's just put this into simple mathematics. So you put money into a deal, you've recycled the money out because you've elevated the value of the property. So you put in whatever money in, you've taken that money out, and now you're getting a monthly return. Okay, exactly. This is with everybody's head. What is your return on investment? It's infinite.
Exactly. We have no money in the deal. And then the best part of that, the best part of that, I call it getting a free house, right? Because
Sure.
you've got no money in the deal, you've got this house that's paying you. And then the best part of it, well, not the best part, but I'm not that risk averse, but if something was to happen and you lose the house, you had no money in it. Who cares? It was a free house.
But you still got X% of equity, whatever the banks demand, X% of equity left in that property anyway. So even though you got money out, you've got equity and an income off the back of that as well.
Exactly.
If you go to your bank manager or your mortgage provider and what have you, and you say to them, oh, mate, Facebook shares and Google shares and Apple shares are going through the roof. Lend me some money on that, would you? What's he going to tell you?
What are you going to use as security? Give me your house.
There we go. Your house, which you've got. Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole idea. And this is why property is the most phenomenal vehicle to enable you to accelerate, to that financial freedom. Picking stocks is, a thumbs up. Okay, sure. A lot of the bankers are going to tell me, I used to work for an investment bank, so they're going to shoot me. But, buying property, once you do a decent amount of due diligence, you understand the market, you understand your entry and your exit points and your cost to buy and remortgage out. Once you've got that, it really is very simple mathematics. And then all you got to do is apply that formula again and again and again. And then you start growing a portfolio. And once you have that portfolio, your residual monthly income grows and grows and grows. Next thing, you're living in Bali, about to start learning how to kite surf. Happy days.
Exactly. So that was one of the strategies that I used.
One or two strategies there? Sorry. Another one or two strategies that you use? No money down?
Yep. The second strategy I started doing a lot of was what we call a contemporaneous settlement or a double settlement or a back-to-back, which I know in the UK is illegal, but in New Zealand, absolutely fine. And it's where you simply use sale and purchase agreements in order to be the buyer and the seller of a property at the same day. So let's say you're selling a property, and a lot of the sourcing agents used to do this. If you're selling a property for $300,000, I'll come get an agreement to buy it from you, and then I might go find my own buyer. Because I've noticed usually it's marketing, usually it's really bad marketing. And so if I notice an aspect of your property, I'll give you an example, right? I found one property which was huge. It was on 1,200 square meters of land. It was right opposite a big development that was going on. I went to the council and I said, this should be able to chop it up into 3 sections. They're like, yes. It was a 4-bedroom house with 2 little 1-bedroom flats underneath. And the price they were asking was ridiculously cheap. And it was just being marketed by the guy's rental manager, and he was trying to sell it to a family. And I was like, this isn't a family home, this is a rental property. And so what I did is I got the contract on it to buy it, and then I simply went out and found someone who would buy it off me, but at a much higher price. And so on the day of settlement, because the date was the same for settlement, all that happened is the lawyers work their magic. I buy it off you for $300. My buyer buys it off me for $350. The lawyers do their magic. It sort of passes through me, and I get $50,000 in the middle, which was an absolutely fantastic way to do it. It means you don't need to be a licensed real estate, which in New Zealand, a licensed real estate agent or a broker, I don't know what you call them in the UK, an estate agent. Which, the laws in New Zealand are quite strict around acting as an unlicensed real estate agent. So for that, it's fine because I am an actual owner of it. But it's easy. It's no money down. Simply, I make it so that my buyer pays me a larger deposit than I pay my seller, and any penalty interest that is due, again, my buyer has to pay a higher interest rate than I would have to pay, just in case anything goes wrong. I don't need to get a mortgage. The lawyers just do their thing on the day. So that one was, seriously, that was a gold one.
So that's good for if we've got people in the UK, as you said, probably a bit tough here, but for global gallivanters and people that are doing this, these are strategies that should potentially be available in your area. But like all things, confirm it with your local solicitor and see what is and isn't available. All right, next one. I'm firing quick fire now. What else you got? No money down deals, strategies.
Well, I just saw it pop up, was the assignable contracts. which is a little bit different to contemporaneous. So assignment is where you just get it under contract and then you sell the contract to somebody. And then right down to just, Airbnb is massive at the moment. I've got some people that I've been working with turn their entire portfolio around from being minus 30,000 in cash flow every year to they both stepped out of their job 11 months later by putting their portfolio onto Airbnb, by then leasing other properties and putting them on Airbnb, and simply managing other people's properties and taking a percentage.
We call it that rent here. So you rent a property and then you rent it out the other side. Obviously, contracts are involved, and sometimes do it on a lease option. But that's a clever way, and it's hot in your city areas where the people are paying top dollar, and quite often you've got pied-à-terres and that sort of stuff, or people that have bought bulk purchases and high-rise and stuff like that, and they never live in it, and they're not making any money from it. This is one way for it, and they can't be bothered to rent it out. They give it to somebody, gives them a decent return. They don't have to worry about any maintenance. The person like yourself, and the tenant should do, is look after their property, maintain it, and the guy that sits in the middle makes the differential. Happy days.
Yeah, exactly. It works especially well in the areas where you have a very low yield, but there is demand for the Airbnb short-term accommodation people. Obviously, you just talked about lease option. We've talked about that in the past. That's another fantastic way. And then you've got, from lease options, you've got, what do we call them? You've got all sorts of vendor finance deals, from vendor mortgages and vendor carryback through to more like so a lease option is more like a hire purchase. You've got it where you just simply pay an interest rate to the owner. So, those are the most common ways of getting in without money. There's a whole ton of other ones that you can do as well, which are a little more obscure, but
there's another one which a lot of people will find this more traditional, but don't always have the cojones to go out and ask for it, is if there's a property transaction that needs to go through a traditional purchase method and you don't have the steel or the financial backing to go and do it, if the deal makes sense, if it is a good enough deal and you can evidence that, if you go and speak to a couple of people, you never know who's got money. You start talking about that deal. The great deals, the money, you find the deal first, the money will find the deal afterwards. And once you've got that, then you can start using capital partners, equity partners, whatever you want to do, and you can then do that transaction. So, but that is a case of using money, but it's other people's money to do that transaction. So I'm really, really happy that there's people around the world, but you definitely do have that full skill set, that full remit of understanding. And I know you can look at a property or see something and you'll be able to know what the answer is or how to do it, and to be able to make money out of it without using any of your money. And I go all the way back to my initial question, is for the people that want to do this, that think, I need to have a couple of 100,000 behind me before I do this. It's not the case at all. You can get out there and you can become financially free in a very rapid succession, a very rapid time. If you know that, but probably the most important thing is the knowledge. First thing, which is what you did. You went and got yourself the knowledge, okay, the skill set, and then actually going out and potentially making mistakes, going out there, having a go, learning as you go. And once you do that, you will actually get there. It's no good just sitting there and hoping and waiting. That's never going to get you anywhere. But using that knowledge, applying that knowledge, and getting out there, there you go. You hanging out. Where about in Bali are you now?
I'm in Canggu, which is on the west coast, if anyone knows Bali, just above Seminyak.
Okay. It's a tough part of the world to be living.
It is. So, much better than an oil rig. Tell you what, the people are a lot more beautiful than on the oil rig as well.
I'm sure, some airy, oily boys. So let's carry on a little bit. I mean, your grasp of obviously the property industry and what you're doing is fantastic. My next sort of angle on questions usually touches on what makes you unique, what sets you out from the rest. I think we've covered that, man. You are somebody that's not only done it, but you're now living the lifestyle that provides. or that opens up for you. And I think that's fantastic. I also think a lot of the people that I speak to are sort of location based, and they'll do deals wherever they are. Some of them go international, all the rest, but you've had that experience, traveling the world. That world experience and all the rest, why would you say that's been important for you?
Travel is a great equalizer, I think. It removes prejudice. You get to understand. I mean, I'm the minority. I live in Indonesia. I live in the biggest Muslim country in the world, and the fourth most populous country in the world. So it really makes you respect how things work back home, and what your systems back home. To be honest, I haven't had a problem in a long time, but I get pulled over by police just because I'm white. So I think once you travel, it really breaks down a lot of barriers. You can understand why certain people are the certain way they are. We have the whole thing about Asian drivers back home. I think they're all over the world. And then you get here and you actually understand why they are like that, or why they speak in broken English, because I'm now learning Indonesian. And it's a very simple language that when you it doesn't translate properly to English, because they don't have all the filler words. So you can start to understand a lot of that side. Okay. What you're talking about before, with being able to travel and that side of things, I built everything right from the start to be able to travel. I love travel. I mean, I when people ask me where I'm from, it just gets confusing. But I'm a little bit more based now in Bali, but for a long time it'd be like 1 month here, 1 month here, 1 month here, and then I found it so difficult to build a business, always being on the move. So I was like, I'm going to take a year or two out, just be solid based whilst I build the business to the next level where I'm bringing in team members and stuff. But I said right from the get-go, create freedom, build wealth. And people told me, they're like, you've got that the wrong way around. Don't you mean build wealth so you can create freedom? I was like, no, the freedom is way more important for me. So it was never about getting big fancy houses. It was never about getting millions in the bank. It was about how can I utilize property to get to my dream of being able to travel and have freedom the quickest way possible. And so that's where I got to today, and have the ability to travel and that side of things. Not sure if that answered your question, but hey.
No, that's good. I mean, that really does fit in with the sort of ethos of the show and what we're trying to capture. So that's really good. Now, you're talking about the business itself. Who is the business? Is it you, or tell me about your team?
So my business has always kind of been me. Obviously, in property, you've got your power team. But when I call what my main business is, which is now like me as an investor, spreading out, many investors like yourself, you go from starting to have a portfolio to focusing on one thing in particular. And as I started traveling the world, I started teaching people how to create the freedom I did, like I said, starting from create freedom, then building wealth. And now I'm at the point where I'm actually scaling it up to where it is a proper business with teams. And so I'm bringing on project or
is that I guess educational side, not the property side?
So I've got three things what I do, three products. One is traditional investing. One, I'm very much now focused on what the future of property is going to be, which I think you'll want to talk about in a minute. And the third one, I was like, okay, what is the best way for me to be investing right now? And I sold up my entire portfolio because the New Zealand property market hit its peak. I knew it was going to start going down, and the amount of capital gains I'd got versus what the rent coming in was, it was actually smarter for me to sell up my property, take that equity, and start investing it with joint venture partners, either as an equity partner or as a straight money partner. And the returns I was getting were way higher than if I had kept my money in a buy and hold portfolio.
Yeah.
And so what I did then is I went out to my network, my friends, and I said, like, this is paying me to live all around the world. Do you want to get in on that action too? And so I set up like a little syndicate where we now invest. I always say cash flow first and then profit deals, and then focusing on equity. Same as any business, right? You don't see the big companies go out and just start investing in all this infrastructure if it's not going to make cash flow right from the get-go.
Sure.
And so I set up this little syndicate, and that's how I'm investing at the moment, where I've got partners who will find the deals, and I'm simply just finding the capital and making that margin on the top within the deals. And then so going back to future property side, I've been really interested in what's happening. Every time I'd go to a property event, people would always ask the same questions. What's going to happen in the market? Are prices going to go up? What are interest rates doing? Which, to be honest, I get so bored. And the speaker would always say the same thing. Well, I don't have a crystal ball. And I was like, but what if you did? There's enough property data out there. Big data is kind of a buzzword at the moment. So I started building an algorithm around it, which is what my syndicate now works off, looking at what's the best suburb to be investing in right now, what's happening in the market as a whole. But it also got me going.
Geographically, where does that look in terms of suburbs? Is that specific country or globally, or where does that work?
It's specifically New Zealand for now, because the data sources come from different angles. The goal is actually to build something that will work in with real estate agents, and then once we have that right plugin to their CRM system, then it can go globally very easy. But we're just making sure we've got everything working right from the get-go, and starting in New Zealand because it's the easiest place. I know the people, I can get access. I've got the network there very, very easy. But I've always been part of these higher level networks, looking at many of the different trends and technologies that are coming in. I've been to LA with Peter Diamandis for Abundance 360. I've got another mentor, Roger Hamilton. He does the Fast Forward Summits, which are the top 10 trends and everything coming in. And after a few years, I was like, how is any of this going to implement or affect the real estate industry? And the more I started looking at it, from 3D printing houses to eco houses, which is a big trend at the moment, and even right down to what the demonetization of housing is going to look like, which again, I know you want to talk about later with the ending homelessness side. I was like, there is a ton of things about to come in. We've seen crowdfunding come in, e-REITs, all sorts of things. And I was like, I'm going to study this a little bit further. And so as I looked at what was happening, I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to build higher level businesses off the back. And so I basically got two types of portfolios now. One which is more lifestyle properties, which is where we have fractional ownership of luxury properties around the world. And essentially they'll tie in as well with that algorithm once our algorithm does go global, to be able to say, okay, like Greece right now, you can buy mansions in Greece for pretty small amounts, right? Because, that sort of thing. And so we're like, well, why don't we just go into these markets and buy up luxury properties and have co-ownership with other people who are like, traveling the world, but they don't want to live in one house. I've never owned my own home. So for me, it's a chance to own a ton of homes around the world. And yeah, so that's one direction, because we're very much in the shared economy. I think that.
Okay, so we'll get into the future stuff now. So we sort of come from your past, where you've been, what sort of led you up to where you are now. Describe what the business is, what you're involved with, those three different legs now. Now, another big part of what's key in the world today and essential to build yourself and your brand, and how I stumbled on you, in fact, was through social media and branding. So the question is, how do you see branding as being important, and what do you do maybe in social media or from a branding perspective to enhance your business?
I think branding is really important, especially for me. But I say that, but I've never spent too much money, or I've never actually engaged a branding expert. I've always just came out. I've been really raw and real. What you see is what you get. I don't hide anything. I have many business partners who hate me because I'll tell the truth. So they're trying. I don't know why people do that, but they'll try to be all sneaky or something behind the scenes, or not tell the full truth. And I'll be like, why? It's so much easier to tell the truth. And then you don't need to remember anything, because you just need to remember the truth. And two,
Yep.
people are going to respect that. Three, if it's the right customer, it's the right customer. And
Yep.
so I'm like, I don't need to hide behind any walls. If you don't like me, that's fine. We won't do anything together.
Completely.
Yeah, and I'm fine. I don't need people to like me.
Honesty and integrity builds a long-lasting relationship. If you're into doing one deal and you never want to see somebody again, then you can go and talk nonsense. But if you don't have that capacity or that ethic, you're not in it for the long haul. And the property is a long haul game. It's about building relationships for the long haul, if that's what you want.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
And there's enough bad reputations in the property industry already. But I started off building my brand and everything by what we call being a leading learner. I've never stood up and said I'm the expert. I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is everything I'm learning. And I started that when I first got into the property industry. Obviously, I was focused at the younger people. So I was saying, hey, I just went to a seminar, learned this, here's a strategy. And then 6 months later, I actually pull off the strategy and it works. And I now own a property using that strategy, right? And now I'm doing exactly the same with the future of property side. I'm saying like, okay, I'm going out researching, I'm going to these big events, hanging out with all these futurists. This is what I'm learning. For example, we're going to have self-driving cars. Well, I mean, technology already exists, but soon we're going to have self-driving cars en masse. What you need to start thinking about is, one, the nature of what a car is going to change. It's going to be from something you drive in a vehicle to get you from A to B to something that's going to drive itself, and it's going to become so much more complex than just a vehicle. Like you could have a meeting room in it, maybe you could have a gym in it. And there's all these technologies and waves coming in, and so I'm not telling people how this is going to disrupt real estate or anything, but just simply saying, what would it mean if once self-driving cars come in, that people don't mind commuting for an hour because the commute is not the same as a commute where you're just sitting in traffic now, tooting your horn. You're actually going to be able to work, read the paper, your tablet, whatever. You could be in a virtual reality meeting in the car on the way to work. You could be sleeping. You could have this nice bed while the car just drives itself. So that, will that mean that people are going to live further and further away from the cities because their commute is completely different? And just those sorts of things.
What
exactly? But pointing out many of these trends and technologies which are coming out, which people have never thought about. And as you say, property is a long-term game. But I think we're really on the verge of a disruption within the real estate industry, much in the same way that when the internet came up in like the early 2000s, right? And you started having companies like Facebook pop up or Amazon pop up, and it just started killing retail. I think we're very much going to start to see a lot of disruptions within the property industry in the next 10 to 20 years.
No, sure. I interviewed Steve Wozniak in LA in November about that very subject, about how he saw technology disrupting the real estate and property industry. It was really great to have his insight. He was talking about even right on back down to blockchain technology, speeding up the whole transaction process, which is archaic if you think about it.
Blockchain is going to really stir the pot.
Oh no, sure. I mean, it's going to change incomes, wealth divisions all around the world. But that's a completely different subject. But he was talking about how the technology was going to change it. He was also talking to me about from the virtual perspective, owning homes wherever they are. We have virtual reality. I can tour a home now, on your phone, or put on an Oculus or whatever it is, and view a house somewhere around the world. You don't even have to travel there. And if mummy wants to see it, she can put it on as well, and she can have a walk around the house and tell you where you should be and where you shouldn't be spending your money as well. So technology absolutely is a key part of where we're going. So very, very important. I've just got one other section, and then we'll get back into the future. I like to sort of break off, and then we'll come back to it again. Again, it's another subject where I pretty much don't even have to go there. We've already gone there. Life for me is 4 letters: is leisure, income, family, and experience. How do you balance those for us? The whole work-life balance. Tell me what you do with that.
Leisure, income. What was that?
Leisure, income, family, and experience. Simplified work-life balance. How do you balance the good stuff with the business stuff?
So the most important thing, I'm a freedom investor, right? So the most important thing is freedom. anything which ties me up, it's not going to happen. And so, that starts with having your own set of values, right? So for me, absolute freedom, fun, and then it's about your purpose or your mission. And I actually went and spent a month in Africa earlier this year in January, and I did two separate things. The first thing I did was I joined a tour called B1G1, buyonegiveone.com, and that's a platform that helps connect you to make bigger impacts through donating to the right organizations. And so they were doing a tour through Kenya, looking at many of different projects that they had going on. And like I'd kind of gotten in, and I mean, in the past, I mean, property is a little bit selfish to start with until you get your freedom. And then I was like, okay, I want to find my bigger purpose in what I'm doing in the world. And so I went there, and I'd been talking about like going out and building these massive villages so that people can have houses and that sort of thing. And then I got there and I discovered, I was like, they don't actually really need our help. The people there, they've got people in the communities who are standing up, who are leading and charging forward and helping everyone. What they lack is resources. And so that was a big shift for me, that I didn't need to come in and start building all this stuff. There were people there who would make it all happen. They just needed help, usually financially, or some sort of guidance. And then the second thing I did after Kenya, I then went on a 12-day safari through Botswana with one of my best friends. And a 12-day safari is a really long time because you're stuck in the bush, nothing to do, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. And you do the morning safari and do the evening safari, and then you've got about 6 hours during the day where you're stuck in it. It's hot. Oh yeah, you're from South Africa, so you know what it's like. And so I was stuck in the bush, and I started reading Simon Sinek, The Power of Why. I'll start with the why. These sorts of things. And I just took the time really to do a lot of thinking, and really working and honing in on what my actual purpose and everything was.
Sure.
And it essentially came down to democratizing property so that everybody in the world would have access to real estate to use as a wealth creation vehicle, so that they could essentially create financial security or financial stability, so that they could then work on their mission. So people like one of the guys in Kenya who I'd met, if he had the financial stability, he could focus so much more on his work, in lifting the wealth of the village. And the other thing I found, which was really interesting, was we were sitting there talking with one village, and they were working with another village nearby. And they said that they were teaching business skills to this village, and this village was well known for honey. And everybody had their own little beehives, and they'd sell their honey, like a liter of honey, for maybe 400 shillings, so call it $4 US. And they said, hey, if you combine all your honey together and you go to the markets further away, you can sell it for 1,000 shillings or $10 US. And so they're now helping this other village make more money and create more wealth. And I said to him, I was like, why wouldn't you just go buy all the honey up at $4 and then go to the market yourself and sell it for $10? And he said, because in 10 years' time, if we help these guys to create financial stability and to help their people, they're going to be better trading partners, and the whole community of Kenya is going to be better off in 10 years time. And I was like, holy, I know you don't want to swear on here, but holy shit. Oops. Like that's just a completely different way of thinking that we don't really have, right? We see an opportunity, we go and exploit it, whether it's for the good or the bad, but you exploit an opportunity. They're like, well, why don't we help raise them up? Even though we're living in tents, we're going to go help raise them up so that in the future we're all going to be better off together. And I was like, that is just so cool. And so
awesome. And that's something we were talking about earlier about, opening yourself up so that you can live the life that you want. I was having a discussion with the producer of the show about that. I genuinely believe that all human beings inherently are good people, but they're trapped in that financial realm and they do silly things because of lack of money. But once you free somebody from the shackles of the money, I believe that people will do good things and that they will start contributing to mankind. I've got another saying. When I was in LA, funny enough, I met a whole lot of celebrities and super wealthy and all the rest of that. But I had one main takeaway from that, and it wasn't about the money. Yes, the Americans can get quite brash, money, money, money. But at the heart of it, all of them are great people, and they say it's not about the money; it's about the good that you can do with the money. So that's why they chase the money. It might look quite selfish, but it's completely not that. The more money they make, the more good stuff they can do with that money, and that's the mission. And like you saying, you lifting people up so that they can go and do it. It's the same sort of thing. So we all, and I'm so glad you grabbed that mindset. It's not always about us. Hey, you happy you're living on a beach in Bali? Happy days, But let's try and help the others by education, through knowledge, through leverage, and all the rest, so that people can continue to do the right things. Once you're released, if you're an artist and you want to go and sit on a beach and paint, that's brilliant. But I genuinely believe that once you're in that environment, you will start caring for and helping fellow man to try and lift them up, and that's brilliant. So I mean, that's your whole thing. You're known as you call yourself the freedom investor and a futurist. So tell me how you're taking that. We've been talking about a bit of the future. Where do you see it going in sort of 3 to 5 years?
Ooh, good question. So the freedom investor side started off with my freedom, and then I got my freedom, and now it's more work on freedom for everyone else in the world. So that's where I talk about democratizing property. And the futurist side is very much how these trends and technologies that are coming in are going to be allowing for that dream and that mission to happen. So 3 to 5 years time, I'm going to have CEOs in my business. So I won't be so much, on the ground running them, more the visionary, and basically focusing a lot more, living my purpose every day. My goal is to end homelessness in New Zealand, within 5 years time, and luckily for me, we've now got a left-wing government who has their own sort of goal, and so I've got my team charter for what my goal for 2018 and everything we want to be doing, and one of them is employing someone whose sole job is going to be working in with all the charities that we work with through the B1G1 program, as well as customer service, but also basically solving homelessness. And this was something that I worked out when I was in Africa, because I've always talked about homelessness, and there's this big passion there, but it never quite felt true. Like it never felt 100% honest, like why I was going for homelessness, until I realized if we can democratize real estate and we can ensure that everyone on earth has their own home, then, like you say, that lifts up the standards for everyone. It creates financial stability for everyone. And it means that if you want to go out and you want to follow your purpose, if you want to try something, if you want to do something entrepreneurial and it all goes wrong, you're not going to be kicked out on the street. You're still going to have a home. You're still going to have electricity. In the future, a lot more homes are going to be integrated with, whether it's vertical farms or some sort of food production, as well as water collection and energy production. So it means that you're going to be safe. You can go out, you can start following whatever path or whatever dream or whatever mission you want, and you are safe from ending up on the streets, basically. So that's where that side comes around. Very much focused on New Zealand because, one, I had to start somewhere, and we have a very I wouldn't say socialist, but we've got a left-wing government, and people do look after each other. So I think it's going to be a little bit easier. So yeah, that's the big 5-year goal in particular. It's never come down to money, because I've learned that if you need to make a certain amount of money as an entrepreneur, you can usually figure out how to do it just by connecting with the right people and making it happen.
It's bigger than that. I believe the drive to go and chase the money. It's not always about the money. It's like I was saying, it's what you can do with it. It's the lifestyle that it leaves. It's the additional stuff that it leads. It's the support that you can help other people. I mean, just pick somebody, Bill Gates, for example, one of the biggest men in the world. How much money does he give away? Yes, he's earned this much, and some people will chastise him. Oh, no, he chases the money. Look at how much, and look at the good that he's doing with the knowledge and the network and that he's built up and the income that he's built through the Gates Foundation. And that's where I genuinely believe that people, when they get to that level, they start becoming charitable, even if it's just for a tax break, but they will still do it. It's still part of it. So, I mean, Kyron, you absolutely nail it exactly on the head, exactly what this show is all about. It's, doing something for a positive reason. It's the knowledge how to do it with no money down. It's the ability that everybody has. You've got half a brain and half a drive. You can get out and do exactly what you're talking about. You've got a phenomenal plan, a phenomenal sort of ethos and drive where you want to go about ending homelessness. I think that's, that's a fantastic challenge. And when, I'm not going to say if, when it actually materializes, I mean, wow, what bigger gift can you give back to your country, really? I mean, it's fantastic. And I know you won't stop there. You'll start going around the world and trying to educate people how to do this. So you can't do it alone. Yes, you've got, so this show, we have a few thousand viewers. We're growing week on week, but it's social media, the power of social media. So I'll ask you and your colleagues and all the rest to share the death out of this on Facebook. Get it out and multiply it out there as much as possible. The more people that see this, the more people are going to understand your awesome message. But for the people that don't know you and that are watching this, what do you want to tell them? What do you want to ask them? What do you need from them, or what can you give them? Speak to our viewers out there. What do you want them to know?
I think the biggest thing is really pulling down inside of you and getting this hunger to follow a mission, to go on a journey, and whether you use property, whatever vehicle, because property is just one wealth creation. You talked a little bit about stocks. I don't understand stocks at all, but it's just one wealth creation vehicle in order to give you the financial stability, financial security, financial freedom, whatever you're after. But it's all about playing that bigger game. I believe that everybody does have a purpose. Everybody is on this planet for a reason. But most people are stuck in the daily grind. They're stuck in the rat race to even think about it. Most people are just trying to survive. So it's actually, you're doing the world a disservice if you don't create that financial stability and start following your purpose and start making a dent in the world, because you were put on here to do it, to follow your dreams, to stand up, shine bright, and change the world. Everyone can do it.
I believe that's what makes us inherently human over an animal, is we have the capacity to improve our environment, improve our lifestyle, not only for ourselves, but for others. And I agree with you. If you're not doing that, if you're not taking steps to grow and to help others, I think you shortcutting the very reason or the very right that you have to be on this planet. But we're getting a bit philosophical. This is a program after all, but that's what it comes down. But that's the core of what the radio show is. It's not just money greedy, money hungry, megalomaniac property tycoons that are doing stuff. This is what I'm looking to get on the show. It's guys that are doing stuff better, guys that have all the skill sets, all the knowledge, but are doing great stuff out there. And obviously very thankful to have you on the show. Just running out of a bit of time. We've run over a little bit, but I won't say I don't really care. But when you have a message as strong as yours, I'm more than happy to keep you going. But we usually sign off the show with talking about gratitude and what you're grateful for, or what you're doing that's philanthropic, or what you do that's paying forward or morally correct for man and environment. But you encapsulate that completely. I mean, everything that we've spoken about pretty much refers straight back to that right from the beginning. You know, the freedom and the freedom investor. Why are you doing it? The fact that you're educating other people as well, the good that you're doing, the fact that you're looking at ending homelessness. I think you're a remarkable human being, and honorable human being. And I genuinely, I'd say that from the depth of my heart, I'm honored to have you on the show. I feel blessed that I stumbled you on Facebook. Some people say, "Oh, you know, the universe aligned and all the rest of that." You never know what you're looking for. You find when you go on the internet.
Definitely.
So from my part, honestly, and everybody that's listening to this, heartfelt thank you. Anything else that you want to say before we wrap up at all, Kyron?
The only thing I would repeat, I said it earlier, but this is how much I do believe in it, is that quote I said from Steve McKnight: "Don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do." There's many reasons why you shouldn't do something, but you only need one reason why you should do it. And if you can figure out, you know, what it is you can do and leverage that, then you can make anything happen.
No, very true. And I also believe on that. If you want something badly enough, you'll find a way. Otherwise, you'll find an excuse. And if you're
yes,
yeah, that's Jim Rohn. If you find an area that you don't have a skill set, let's just say I don't know, I couldn't lay 2 bricks. I haven't got a clue, but I've got a great build team that helps me. You know, my accounting skills could be better. I have a wizard of an accountant that does that. So don't ever think about what you don't have. Understand where your shortcomings are and just fill those gaps in with other people that do have those strengths. Don't ever let anything like that hold you back achieving your dream, whatever it is that you want to do. I don't know how you feel about that.
Definitely. One of my other favorite quotes is, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
Oh, very true. So true. I mean, when you find your purpose and your passion, that's when you you come alive. I agree completely.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So, Kyron, on behalf of myself, this radio show, all the viewers, it has been a genuine honor to have you, and honored to meet you. I look forward to continuing this relationship online, whatever. And I'm sure I'm definitely going to bump into you somewhere around the world at some stage, probably fighting over a house that we both want to buy. You know, to end hope. But
I'll definitely hit you up next time I'm in London.
Yeah, do that. I mean, I'm all over London. I'm sometimes over Europe, but yeah, we citizens of the planet. So
exactly.
Again, honestly, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a great inspiration and education to everybody, and I hope everybody takes heeds and takes some of the lessons. If everybody has a smidgen of what Kyron has and puts that into the world's definitely going to be a greater, better place. So thank you very much once again for being on the show, Kyron. Have a great evening or great morning where you are, and enjoy. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers, mate. Bye.